In the Arizona desert, just beyond the edge of the city, the earth rises into a spine of jagged rock called the Superstition Mountains. A name earned from legends buried deep within its canyons. This area is harsh, dry, and absolutely unforgiving. And for centuries, these mountains have been surrounded by stories of secrets, of spirits, and of a mind so rich in gold that it could change your life forever. That is, if you live to tell the tale. Skulls found in dry washes, campsites never broken down, clues that don't quite add up. The legend of the lost Dutchman's mine has pulled in treasure hunters, prospectors, and dreamers from all over the world, and many of them have never made it back. Today, we're following the real trail behind the myth into the life of a man named Jacob Waltz. The strange clues he left behind, and the bodies that have turned up since. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the wild is belief. Welcome to Wild Curiosity. So the Superstition Mountains sit just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, and they are exactly what you picture out of like a Wild West scene. Jagged peaks, dry riverbeds, and ancient volcanic rock. It gets so hot in the summer that you can cook on the sand, literally. Indigenous Apache communities have long considered the Superstition Mountains very sacred. According to their oral traditions, these mountains are the home of their thunder god, a powerful spirit who doesn't take kindly to trespassers. And as we go through this story, you'll start to wonder if maybe that warning wasn't just symbolic. So, one of the main attractions of these mountains is Weaver's Needle. It's the most iconic feature. It's a spire of rock that you can see from miles and miles away. It's really cool looking. Many clues in the story of the Lost Dutchman circle back to this spot. It is also kind of an iconic spot in the story. The area is still today very deadly, very rugged terrain, flash floods, and literally scorching desert heat. Let's talk about the man behind the legend. His name was Jacob Waltz. He was an 83-year-old German immigrant who had come to Arizona during the 1860s gold rush. By 1891, he wasn't prospecting anymore, though. He was farming near Phoenix, and that spring, a massive flood destroyed his home and his fields. He reportedly had to spend 2 nights clinging to a tree to avoid drowning. So he barely survived that encounter, and he ended up coming down with pneumonia and was taken in by this 29-year-old boarding house owner named Julia Thomas. They both spoke German. Apparently, German immigrants in this area were very common at that time. And so over the next few months, they kind of had a friendship that grew while she took care of him. She nursed him back to health. And somewhere along the way, he started to really trust her. And he trusted her enough after a while to tell her a secret. Friends of Jacob showed up with 5 sacks of gold ore recovered from his flooded farmhouse, and Julia understandably took notice to this, which also I think it's cool his friends did that because he's obviously this bedridden 83-year-old and they still brought him his gold back. So that's when Jacob finally told her, though, after those guys brought the 5 sacks of gold ore, he told her that the gold came from a secret mine that he had discovered. A mine so rich it could be worth $20 million in his time. And today that is over 700 million. He said it was located in the nearby Superstition Mountains and that he'd found it years earlier. He said that it was possibly one of the last working mines from the Peralta family, who was a Mexican mining dynasty that had clashed with the Apache in early 1800s. So according to the legend, the Apaches dynamited many of those mines and closed them, but supposedly left one untouched. He describes gold embedded in quartz veins so thick he could cut it off the walls. And if you didn't know, that is usually where gold is created, is it's usually surrounded by quartz. That's a good sign. If you see a quartz vein, there could be gold in there. So as his health declined with his pneumonia, he made a promise to Julia. He said he'd take her to the mine, but he never got the chance because he didn't get better. Instead, he decided to draw a map and left behind a list, of course, as these mining mysteries go. It was very cryptic, weird clues, and they were as follows. So the entrance looked like an upside down funnel. You could see a military trail from the mouth of the mine. A shadow cast by Weaver's needle marked the correct location, and the mine itself sat in a north to south canyon with a distinctive rock face nearby. So then Jacob Waltz dies. He dies on October 25th, 1891, and the legend of the Lost Dutchman mine truly begins. He did end up taking the exact location to his grave, and Julia, who was now convinced the gold was real, set out to find the mine using the maps and the clues. After he died, three of his neighbors, and might have even been the guys that brought the original gold ore to him when he was sick, they found another stash of high grade gold ore under his bed, not just loose nuggets, but chunks of ore that glittered with promise. So, probably chunks that had the quartz and then gold within it. And they claimed that Waltz had told them they could keep it, and so they did. Some of it was sold to a mint in San Francisco, and some was melted down into a necklace and bracelet, and part of it was used to make a matchbox case, which was 4.5 inches long, 1.5 inches wide, cast from that very ore. That same matchbox was later loaned to the Superstition Mountain Museum for a one-day exhibit, and today a photo of it still remains on permanent display. Here's what makes that so wild, though, is most gold mines are considered rich if they yield 2 to 3 ounces of gold per ton of rock. But this ore that they found under his bed that Waltz had left behind, it tested 50 ounces per ton. So, whatever you think of the legend, Waltz had something and it wasn't ordinary. So, we don't really know for sure where this ore came from, but it was very rich. But despite months and months of searching, Julia came up with nothing. No gold, no mine, just a sunburn, disappointment, and a very quickly dwindling bank account. She had apparently sold a store that she ran, pretty much ready to just give it up for the gold. Eventually, she just gave up and told her story to the press, actually, and newspapers ate it up. The phrase Lost Dutchman's mine was coined, a mix up because people, this is kind of sad, but a mix up from people or mistaking Deutsch, which is German, for Dutch, and the legend just exploded. To this day, people are still trying to find this gold. So the original map that he had given to Julia Thomas, or told Julia Thomas about, and possibly she drew a rough map of, the original was never surfaced publicly. But what we do know is that multiple hand-drawn maps started circulating in the years that followed. So Julia tried to recreate the route from memory and passed along the sketches to friends and the newspapers. Some were sold, others were copied and redrawn so many times they barely resembled the original or what was thought to be the original. So it's kind of like telephone of map drawing, cartography, or whatever. So the maps are usually including crude outlines of Weaver's needle, strange symbols, sometimes even Spanish words or religious iconography, things like hearts, crosses, or snakes, and they usually always point towards canyons, shadows, or a mysterious X hidden deep in the range. None of them have ever led anyone to gold, but they've had plenty of people they led into danger. Today, copies of the old Dutchman maps can still be found in antique stores, archives, and dusty internet corners. Some are probably hoaxes. Others may have been sincere attempts to retrace Waltz's steps. Either way, the map became more than a clue. It kind of became a curse. Once the story hit the newspapers, the rush was on. Treasure hunters poured into the Superstition Mountains hoping to strike it rich, and some never came back. Let's talk about some of these prospectors and treasure hunters that ended up meeting a not so great fate while searching for the gold mine and kind of just adding onto the lore of the entire area. So let's start with Adolf Ruth. In the spring of 1931, Ruth, who was a 66-year-old veterinarian employed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Bureau of Animal Husbandry, and he had a long-standing obsession for locating the fabled lost Dutchman mine. He arrived in Arizona in 1931. His son had been given old maps from a Mexican official, a supposed relative of the Peraltas, which was the Mexican mining dynasty that was pushed out by the Apache tribe. So Adolf became obsessed with proving they were real, these maps, and actually led to this legendary mine. The maps pointed not to Weaver's Needle, but to Blacktop Mesa, which was another distinct landmark in the range. Ranch hands dropped him at Willow Springs, and within days, he vanished. Months later, some campers found a bottle floating along the river with a note inside. The note read, quote, "I'm sitting under a tree in a creek with a leg broke. I've got to have help quick. Finder of this note, please give to Howard Peterson. P.S. I have found the lost Dutchman." So this was a letter from Ruth, and he had sent this little message in a bottle down the river, hoping that someone would help him. Unfortunately, his skull was found near the Salt River with what looked like a bullet hole. But later, they found the rest of his body, and oddly, none of his gear was missing except for the maps. In his notebook, the words Veni Vidi Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered, and cryptic notes about a circle and black volcanic fields were listed. And the case just totally became a media circus. Was he murdered? Did he find the mine? Or was it all just a delusion? But despite all the claims, Ruth was not murdered for his map. Both of the sheriff's offices around that area concluded that Ruth died of natural causes, probably due to dehydration and starvation. The theory that he was decapitated or shot has long since been accredited to predatory animals, such as a coyote that found him later. Then we have Jesse Capin, and this was in 2009. So this legend has been going on. It's still today. People are obsessed with it. Jesse was a 35-year-old hotel bellhop from Denver. He spent years researching the old Dutchman story, went solo with gear, maps, and a dream, and he also disappeared. His body was found 3 years later, wedged in a remote crevice, so he probably fell. But, his main fatal mistake, and same with Adolf, was going alone. And he's far from the only one. Over the years, this so-called motherlode had drawn in hundreds of prospectors, hikers, and hopefuls. Some never came back. Cell phones don't work out there high in the superstitions. Magnetic rock can mess with your compass, and temperatures can swing from scorching to freezing in the same day. Some other notable deaths were Curtis Merworth, Ardian Charles, Malcolm Meeks. They all vanished in the year 2010. Search teams found their remains scattered across brutal terrain. Their maps and clues never led to gold, only to exposure and dehydration. Even seasoned searchers have had terrifying encounters. Another man, George Johnston, who chased the Dutchman's gold on and off for decades, described being stalked, spotting a glint of metal behind him, maybe a rifle. He believed some claim holders were willing to shoot and protect what they thought was theirs. Whether it's the landscape or the legends or plain old bad luck, the Superstition Mountains seem to claim those who get too close. All right, so there isn't really a definitive documented total, but here's what we do know about the people that have died or gone missing while searching in the Superstition Mountains for the mine. So at least a dozen named individuals have died or gone missing while actively searching for the mine. And these include those high-profile cases like Ruth, Capon, and the 3 Utah men. And so according to the locals and the Superstition Mountain Historical Society, who there's experts like Tom Collinborn, a historian and park ranger, have said that over 150 people have died in the Superstition Mountains in this last century, many of them Dutch hunters. So, this estimation includes disappearances that happen during searches, deaths due to heat stroke exposure or accidents, and several cases where foul play or mysterious circumstances are suspected. Sounds pretty haunted, guys. Also, I don't know, maybe you should search at night because, dude, it just gets too hot out there. But while we'll never know the exact number, local experts and historians estimate between 50 to 150 people have died and gone missing in these mountains, many of them while searching for the lost Dutchman's mine. Some were treasure hunters, some were hikers who wandered off the trail and didn't come back, and others died under circumstances that still raise a lot of questions. Shallow graves, missing gear, gunshot wounds, and those are just the ones we know about. So, who knows how many people have really died recently? I actually wanted to look up what the most recent death or disappearance was there. So the most recent confirmed death in the Superstition Mountains actually occurred. Whoa. So it actually occurred on May 11th, 2025, when 33-year-old Noah Faribaugh died during a hike on the Wave Cave Trail near Gold Canyon, Arizona. Faribaugh was part of a group of 5 hikers who had been on the trail for approximately 6 hours in the extreme heat. The group ran out of water. Yeah, it's just dangerous out there. This legend doesn't just haunt the stories, it's printed right there on current maps. So if you hike into this region today, you'll literally be walking on the legend. So trails there in the Superstition Mountains bear the names like Lost Dutchman Trail, Dutchman's Trail number 104, and Peralta Canyon Trail. I think there's also one called the Gold Trail or something, and all nods to the treasure hunters and stories that came from before. There's even a place called the Lost Dutchman State Park right at the western edge of the Superstitions, just outside of Apache Junction. It's one of the most popular access points into the range, and it's got a Dutchman campground, Dutchman picnic areas, and dozens of plaques and trailheads that reference the mine. The park sits in the shadow of Flatiron, a striking rock formation with a view that makes you feel like you're standing on the edge of the legend. So, really cool view from up there, whether you believe in the gold or not. Standing there, heat shimmering off the stone, saguaro cactus towering around you, it's easy to understand why people kept going back. So the stories still live on, not just in old maps or newspaper clippings, but in the dirt under your boots, which I thought was really cool. Like, this was such a prominent myth and legend that even the government put these names in this area. So I think that also kind of feeds people's thought that this is real. So why does this story keep coming back? Why do people still hike into the heat with nothing but a compass and a photocopied map from over 100 years ago? So gold fever is real. The hope of easy riches is powerful and has been, especially in America and the West, for over a century. There's a myth of the American frontier, like taming the wild, finding what others couldn't. And I feel like that is a big push also. And there's just something irresistible about an unsolved mystery with just enough truth to make it believable. Plus, it's hard not to want it to be true. 700 million in gold waiting in some canyon. That's catnip for dreamers, adventurers, and the mildly unhinged. Some say Waltz didn't actually discover the mine at all, and that he might have been a claim jumper who stumbled on gold someone else had hidden. Or maybe he had done a favor for a surviving Peralta family member who gave him directions as repayment. These stories feed the myth, keeping it alive, even when logic says it should have faded a long time ago. One thing that's crazy is still today, people are out there trying to find the lost Dutchman's gold mine. But even if you do find it, the government's ready. So in 1984, they passed a law forbidding all prospecting in the Superstition Wilderness, meaning if you did find the Dutchman's gold, you better figure out a way to sneak it out without getting caught. To discourage treasure hunters from entering and disturbing the Superstition Wilderness area, this law prohibits mining and prospecting activities within the area. Even if someone found it, the gold would actually belong to the government, not to the finder. In the end, we still don't know if the Lost Dutchman's mine is real or not. Maybe Waltz found something, maybe he was telling stories in his final days, or maybe, just maybe, it's still out there, buried in the rock, guarded by time and terrain. What we do know is that the superstitions have claimed more than their share of dreamers, and they don't give up answers easily. So if someone hands you a treasure map, think twice, especially if it leads to a canyon where the rocks cast long shadows. To me, I always think about even shipwrecks or anything where these quote unquote treasures have gone missing. In my head, I think, well, if I found this, I wouldn't tell anybody. Like, what's the point of telling people? Because people like the government or museums or whatever are going to want them. So, why would I tell anybody about it? I would keep it a secret. But I don't know. What would you guys do? Would you tell somebody for the fame or I don't know? But if you're still listening right now, I appreciate you so much. And you are my kind of curious. So here's the deal. If you liked this episode, tap the follow button. Please rate the show. That is like one of the more helpful things. And leave a quick review wherever you're listening. Even if it's just a sentence, that makes a huge difference. Not just for the algorithm, but for real people like you finding Wild Curiosity for the first time. I really appreciate that. I know you can comment on Spotify on the episodes, and you can leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts as well. If you have got a theory about the Lost Dutchman's mine, or you just want to share your favorite hiking story, drop it in the comments. You can also find me on Instagram at Wild Curiosity Podcast and Facebook, Wild Curiosity Podcast. Yeah, and it's really just me. So I don't know. I'm just trying to make this work. So, anyways, my friends, my curious buds, stay curious, explore the wild, and don't follow every trail. Some are better left forgotten. Thanks, guys. Love you. Bye.